So this is a grant writing 101 training. We're going to go through some basic components of grant writing, and then we're also going to um, touch on some key components of the application as well. So we're going to get started with some welcome and introductions. I'm going to kick it over to Alyssa.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Caranta. I am part of the environmental team at the Greater New Orleans Foundation. And my colleague, Dan, I don't believe is able to join us today, but he is the other part of the environmental team here. And I am going to be the program manager on the Community-Led Green Infrastructure Grant Making Project. And so we'll be your main point of contact throughout the application process.
And hey, y'all, I'm Rachel Sanderson. I live in Hammond, Louisiana, and I'm a senior program officer with the Institute for Sustainable Communities. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do in just a minute, but myself and then Cora, who is also here, is going to be your main point of contact for technical assistance. So Alyssa, do you want to talk a little bit more about GNOV?
Sure, yeah, the Greater New Orleans Foundation, we serve the Greater New Orleans area, so the 13 parish area surrounding New Orleans. And the environmental team has been awarded this grant through the EPA to further some of our goals around resilience and sustainability to extreme weather events in the Greater New Orleans area. And we have contracted with the Institute for Sustainable Communities to support us on the technical assistance component, which I'll let Rachel talk about.
So ISC for short, we do work nationally, and a lot of our work is really focused on a couple of different things. The first is that we work to support communities of color that are on the front lines of climate change and doing climate focused work. So that could be everything from green infrastructure in this case, all the way to building decarbonization, solar resilience hubs, et cetera, et cetera. So, our role is really to support those organizations in doing that work. That could look like a lot of different things. It could look like research. It could look like peer-to-peer networking and partner relationship building. Could look like support with grant applications and more. So we're really here to be able to support doing that work and to further develop the field. All right, so we want to hear a little bit about y'all too. And actually, since we have a really small group of folks here, I think, there's only two of y'all that aren't program staff. So if you feel comfortable coming off of mute, I'm not going to do a poll. I think that would be kind of silly. So we're just curious, like, Dia, Jacqueline, are y'all planning to apply? Have you written a grant before? Have you taken grant writing training in the past? Just like, if you want to answer one or all.
Sure. How y'all doing? I am Jackie, for Jackie, Jackie. And I am thinking about applying. Not sure if I am. My organization, New Orleans Food Green Structure Collective, which is a partner of Waterwise Gulf South. We are fiscally sponsored by Waterwise Gulf South. So we're still in the conversation as to if we are. But I have taken grant training just previously with the Louisiana Gulf Coast Grant Program with the Deep South Center of Environmental Justice. And that went well because I just was informed that I got it.
Nice, congrats.
So, yeah. But I am always interested in learning more, so I am here.
Cool. Thank you for being here, Jackie. And congrats again. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Dia Hodnett, and yes, I'm planning to apply. Well, our organization is planning to apply for the opportunity. I'm with Ujima Economic Development Corporation, and we've got some community-led green infrastructure programs running right now that we've only gotten support to do like the first phase, and we have additional phases that we've been long wanting to roll out. And so I'm looking forward to learning through this grant TA process. I have written a grant before, but I tend to look at it as a sport that requires practice, and it's always great to take advantage whenever funders offer TA or offer trainings, um, because things change and things evolve, and we could certainly always get better at creating a compelling ask for what we're trying to do, especially in this current environment where so many different expectations and themes are in play, and stuff like that. So we want to make sure that what we're putting out there is current. It resonates with the landscape right now, and it's also clearly stated about who we are and what we want to use the funding to do. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing, Dia. Yeah, and it's things are changing every single day. Um, it's a lot to grasp, I think, at least for me. Cool. Well, without further ado, we'll dive right in. So I'm going to toss it back over to Alyssa to talk a little bit more about the opportunity. And just Dia, Jackie, just so you know, like we do these pretty informally. So if you've got questions as we go, feel free to come off mute, put it in the chat. We want to make sure that this is as interactive as it can be and that it serves your needs so that you can put your best foot forward in your application.
Right. So the community-led green infrastructure funding opportunity is going to be funding 18 green infrastructure projects across 13 parish region. There are 2 rounds to this project. So the first round is the one that is currently open, and the next round will be doing the same thing again next fall. The purpose of this is to fund green infrastructure projects that reduce floodwater and stormwater. And also, we're really looking to build capacity for organizations to apply and receive federal funding in the future. So supporting organizations in in building their internal infrastructure and getting systems in place to be able to navigate all of the federal compliance requirements that this kind of funding requires. And so we're doing that through this pre-award technical assistance, but also the grantees that are awarded will receive a good amount of support in navigating all of that. And we'll have a community of practice to support them in that as well. This is a federally funded award. It is through the Environmental Protection Agency. And a couple things to note. Rachel will talk a little bit more about the different stages and who might be a good candidate to apply to each of them. But we do have 3 different types of subawards that we're giving. The first one is community-led design and planning, and those will be $50,000. We're awarding 6 of those, and all 6 of those will go in the round 1. So we're giving all 6 of those this year. So if you have a couple different projects that you're thinking of applying for, and one of them is design and planning, this round is the only opportunity that you'll have. So it might be a good idea to do that one this time. Stage 2 is for implementing a green infrastructure project. Those are $150,000. And then stage 3 is for evaluation and storytelling, and those are $62,500. You can only apply for 1 award per round, but you can apply for both rounds. And the application window for this round closes on October 24th.
Thanks, Alyssa. I'm going to skip ahead to this one really quick. I realize I put these in an order that maybe needs to be updated. So Alyssa had mentioned those 3. Yeah, please go ahead, Dia.
Sorry to interrupt, just for quick clarity on what you just shared, Alyssa. So, for instance, if our organization wanted to go for the implementation of focused funds, that's what you apply to next year, right? And
you can apply for, we will be giving, if we get great applications for implementation this time around, we'll award those as well.
Okay.
It's just the The only one that's only one round is the design and planning.
Okay,
Implementation and evaluation storytelling can go for either round.
okay. So just to it probably would be best to apply for um planning for this time, and then if you guys do another NOFO in the next round, then we could go for the stage 2. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we've got this graphic that we put together too that hopefully can provide a little bit of clarity as well. So, maybe your beginning question is, if you've got a specific project in mind, like I know you said, Dia, you've got one that's got multiple kind of components or phases. So, have all of the components of your project been implemented? Is the answer yes? Then you're probably just going to want to apply for a stage 3 storytelling and evaluation grant. That's just what's going to make the most sense right now. If you have not implemented all of those and you say no and you come to the next part of this, which is, are all components of your project planned and designed? If the answer is yes, great. Stage 2 community owned implementation is probably a really good fit for you. If you have some of those things together, so like maybe, for example, if you need a permit or something, but you've got your plans drawn up, then you can say somewhat. And if you wanted to, you could go back to that community-led design and planning phase. Or you could also go to community implementation and take care of the permitting part there too. So there is some flexibility there with some of those components are planned, but not all of them are. Then you can do either stage 1 or 2. It's just kind of depending on your comfortability and what's going to give you the best bang for your buck and also the best impact as well. And then if all of those components for your projects are not planned or designed, then you should apply for a stage 1 community-led design and planning grant. So that's kind of if you've got just an idea and you really want to see it through, or maybe there have been a couple of studies on it, but you really kind of want to bring in the community-led element, for example, then that community-led design and planning is a great opportunity. Alyssa, do you want to add anything on this? I know this is the first time we're doing this one together, so.
No, I think this sums it up really nicely.
Okay. And Dia, Jackie, do y'all have questions on that? On this part?
No, the graphic that you guys showed, it really helps to make it all make sense in my mind, at least.
Okay, good. Okay.
Right.
Right, great. Thanks, Jackie. All right, I'm gonna go back in time here because I have done these slides out of order, which is so silly. And then what is grant infrastructure? I think Dia and Jackie, y'all are probably really familiar with this, but for the purposes of this grant, it's really just thinking about moving water from a less desirable place to a more desirable location by mimicking nature. It also really thinks about multiple benefits. So it could manage water, it could reduce flooding. They also tend to look really nice. It could be a public space for people to enjoy. It also probably improves water quality. It could provide habitat. It could make it cooler on those really hot days. There's a couple of photo examples here that y'all have probably seen something like this in person somewhere. So there's a bioswale along the southern edge of the Joseph M. Bartholomew Municipal Golf Course. So you can see like it's really gorgeous. It looks like nice landscaping, but it also helps to clean the water. It helps to retain the water and drain it in a way that supports the function of that particular part of land. And then Thrive New Orleans, they do great work. They had a whole concrete driveway here that just was pooling water. It didn't work very well. And they put in permeable pavers with some drainage underneath as well. So it looks really nice. It drains well now, and hopefully isn't causing that person any flooding issues anymore. Other examples could be rain gardens, French drains, rain barrels, et cetera, et cetera. I think for the purposes of this grant, it's really that community-led piece as well as impact. So, how much water is being moved from that less desirable location to a more desirable location, for example, and making sure that that impact, for example, is really high. That's one example. There could be a ton of other ones for this type of work too, which is amazing. And just want to say, who's this grant writing training for before we jump into stuff? This free training is for people who maybe haven't applied for a federal grant, because this is a federal grant and we can answer questions about that too. Or maybe don't have experience in being lead on the grant. If you're not as familiar with the grant writing process, if you haven't taken grant writing training, or if you want to brush up on it, this could feel repetitive or boring. If you have taken multiple trainings in the past, if you've applied for a federal grant as the lead, if you've applied for more than 5 grants, this is probably stuff that you're really used to doing, or if you're a grant writer. So if that's your whole job, then this is probably going to feel really familiar to you. And we know, Jackie, Dia, that y'all have your own experience here too. So feel free to jump in and add your own experience as well. If you see this moving behind me, it's not something crazy. It's my cat, by the way. So like you'll see this little cat paw moving, just to know that I'm aware. It's a cat that's having a great time. Yeah, so feel free to share your own experiences with grant writing, tips, tricks, and things that you'd like for everybody else to know too. So first steps for grant writing, it is just about as much about being organized as it is about writing. A lot of times there's going to be quite a few documents you've got to compile. And we're going to go over some specific, kind of documents. We've got a document list in this presentation too, that's in the form of a checklist. So as was asked earlier in the chat, you'll have all the slides and you can print that off as your own checklist or export it as a PDF as well. So make sure you're organized. You've got your checklist, you've got your folders, you've got your partners that you're talking to. Really being organized is critical. Make sure you review the eligibility requirements and make sure you've got the staff capacity to work on the proposal and to implement the work. One thing that's good about this is that maybe for, depending on which grant it is, you might have a little bit of funds to hire somebody maybe part-time or full-time or on contract to be able to support the work too. So, kind of thinking about your staffing plan, review the RFA, and consider making a checklist of what you need to submit and what you need from your partners too. So if you've got some partners that you're working with on this, really kind of think about the things that they need to submit to, because that's a part of your job as a lead, is to make sure that your partners are organized too and they've got the information that they need to help be successful. Think about your strategy for writing the grant too. There are so many that you can use. There's one example that comes to mind for me that we've used over at my organization. So there's the Shipley method. It focuses on a full team approach. And this, you can use this with small teams or big teams, but you do kind of a pre-proposal review. So, really thinking about eligibility. Is it a good fit? Does it meet our funding needs? And then, are we going to be able to be competitive? Those are the key things you're thinking about in that stage. For the proposal management, it's thinking about strategy for the development, and it's the brainstorming. This is kind of the fun, squishy piece where you're like, okay, we've got this type of work that we would like to do. Here's how we might do it through the lens of this particular opportunity. Then you got to draft it, which could also be the fun part depending on who you are. So you get to write up your sections, you get to really sell it, you get to talk about the passion and the work and how the work works and serves people. And you submit it, and then you've got your post-proposal submission, which is the last part of the process. So reviewing that together with the team, and just seeing, what are ways through the process as well as in that proposal that you submitted that you think could have been improved. Are there any questions about this particular piece before we move on? Is there anything, Jackie, Dia, that you'd like to add as people who have done this in the past?
No, sounds good so far.
Okay, we'll go to the next then. This for me is always the really fun piece. It's how to tell your story. So what's the pitch? What's the elevator pitch? As we go through this, you're going to notice that we've got, you could also pull up the RFA with this through the grants portal on Foundant. And you'll notice that each one of these sections we've kind of got laid out in a way. So, you're going to have to put in the project short and long-term impact, benefits, and outcomes. So you've got to think about your project pitch. So, in short, what are those impacts? Who does it benefit? What are the outcomes of it? This should also be kind of considered in tandem with community need. So how does this serve the community? How does it, who benefits from it in particular? And then making sure that folks aren't harmed by it either. This is the why you do the work. It's why it matters to community, why it's important, and connecting the dots between lived experience, information, and emotion. So think about what makes your story effective, what can also make it ineffective. So for me, I know that I can tend to write more than is needed. I'm a details person and I love to add those components, but sometimes that can also take away from the story. And then think about what brings out emotion for folks too. So, it's this work is really awesome work, and I find that there's a lot of joy in being able to do it, right? It's giving people access to really beautiful spaces that also work and provide a purpose and serve the community. So there's some really cool stories that I think you can tell as you think about your project pitch too. As a part of something that you're going to need to submit, and that is pretty common with grant applications. I think it depends sometimes. But really thinking about your logic model. So, again, I think this relates back to that project pitch. So if you've got your project pitch, you can also think about your logic model too, and get, it's kind of like getting a layer deeper. If it's an onion, you're just going a little bit deeper. There is a logic model template that you will be required to use and submit. You'll have to upload it. It's editable as a Word document, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's super nice and accessible. But your logic model is just showing like how what you're doing creates the outcome that you want. So you say our input, this is what we're putting in. Our outputs are the activity and participation. So what we do and who we do it to or with. And the outcomes are the impact. So short term, medium, and long term. The term of these grants, just keep in mind, you've got a year to be able to do the work you do. So keeping that in mind as you're thinking about this, that long-term impact, and Alyssa, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it can go beyond the grant term as well. Yes, okay. Just want to make sure that I'm correct in that there. There's a lot of different ways to do these. Go ahead, look like come up.
There's when you building the capacity, or we for it if you
Thanks, Alyssa. Always happy to see you. And then to be really helpful, just as I've done logic models, as I've walked other people through them too. But this is a community toolbox from KU, so University of Kansas, and it's just really kind of provides some examples. It lays it out. This logic model template's a little bit different, so just know that it's not the same, and you're required to use the one that I showed you on that grant slide. But if you're looking for a little bit of inspiration or just to kind of see what it looks like, this is a great place to also look too. All right. So with that, on the previous slide, we talked about those outcomes and the impact. You got to have indicators to show that you have that you're meeting that impact, right? So you can help determine those key objectives by thinking about a couple of different things. So thinking about your indicators in tandem with your milestones, goals, and objectives is going to be really supportive. You've got a milestone template chart as well. And, again, as Alyssa had said, you can come walk through all this together with us. There's a million different ways to do it. But you got to think about what metrics might be supportive to track the efforts that you're doing. So we've got an example here. This does not have to be your example. There are so many different great impacts that can come from green infrastructure projects, and the indicators they vary a lot. So for example, you might have a milestone that is one rain garden is installed. Your goal for that is flooding is reduced on the lot. And you want to be more specific with that if you possibly can be. So, it's talking about how every single time we get a 3-inch rain, we see, the water comes up to this part of the tires, or like if you can kind of really quantify things in a meaningful way and tell that story, I think that's going to be critical. Your metric for this would be the infiltration rate. So your indicator would then be water is drained from that area within a day or two. And areas that hold water after a 30-minute rainfall that drops 2 inches of rain are holding less or no water at all. So thinking about your milestones, your goal with those, and then the metrics and indicators is going to be really supportive in getting your application together and making it really strong and showing that impact. Are there any questions about this piece? I know this can get kind of technical and technical wonk in a way, but that's what we're here for too. Okay, go to the next item. And then because this is called the Community-Led Green Infrastructure Program, this is one of the most critical pieces that you're going to be scored on in terms of criteria, is that community-led aspect. So consider who benefits from the work and who, if anybody, is harmed by it. So thinking about kind of the full spectrum of who's a part of it. And then how you're engaging those folks and what's the kind of framework that you're going to use too. This should also be done while thinking about your project milestones and how community is integrated. You could also get some great indicators from this too. So you could do community surveying, for example. But there's a ton of different frameworks. And Jackie and Dia, I would love to hear, I'm going to share out a couple of examples. And then if you've got some too, this entire project, this grant making program was developed with Ganoff's Community Advisory Board. So I think that's one example of having a really community driven approach. Like they put together the request for applications, and they've been a part of this project every step of the way, is my understanding, of this program development. So you can have that community advisory board or group within your project. You can also ask for funds to support community groups and being engaged. Or you can do stipends, just making sure that people are valued for their time in ways that, make things a little bit easier for them, especially if they've got to miss work or something, for example. And then, another example is hosting a series of community-based events for input and decision-making. It could be across the board, but I think especially on that planning and storytelling piece, that's going to be really critical to the development of the deliverable. But Jackie, Dia, do you have any particular examples that you've participated in or implemented in the past that you want to share to the benefit of the group?
Well, the resident voice and the community driven aspect of the work is kind of baked into everything we do as an organization. Ujima, it's, typically like co-design is the spirit that we work with. So whether it's, a community listening session, whether it is asking for time to get on the agenda of a community meeting that's already going on, whether it's one-on-ones with, elders or other folks that run programs and things like that, or even just sort of taking every opportunity that we can to turn it into a touch point. So whether we're out canvassing for a particular campaign, or if we're tabling at an event, just sort of like working the spirit of transparency and what we're doing and the why behind it is just sort of always there. So sometimes our community-led work is very formal, and we have advisory committees, even for things like the selection of artists and the installation of public art, all the way down to things that have to do with our green infrastructure. But sometimes it's just about like that constant point of contact, letting people know, like, not just what are we doing, but listening to like what's important, what are the priorities of the folks in our project area, and trying to tie that into everything that we're proposing and seeking funding for. So it's sort of like there's examples, and then there's just like the general like ethic that that we have to work with.
Yeah, it sounds like that's how you operate. So I mean, I think that's going to be a key factor in your application that's going to really support y'all in being competitive in that community-led piece for this. Yeah.
As for us, we do the same thing. We involve community and everything we do. Waterwise Network has established neighborhood champions, and it's going through an educational series of attending our 101 workshop and the tour, and then also attending a visioning session. And a visioning session is where we take all the people together in the collective areas and decide where we want to see larger projects done around the city. But outside of that, on the regular, we do residential projects, and also you have to become a neighborhood champion. And once you do, you can apply for a green infrastructure project on your property. And I can attest to it because that's how I got involved. And I have two rain barrels on my property. I have a French drain that leads into a rain garden. Also, and pulling those weeds for that rain garden ain't nothing nice.
It's a job.
Especially when you had 3 weeks of rain every single day consistent, it's a task. But
Yeah. And now 3 weeks worth of drought.
right. Isn't that crazy? So,
Yeah.
that's what we do.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds like that's also going to really support in your application being competitive from the community-led piece too. So, thank y'all so much for sharing. Really appreciate it. It sounds like y'all are doing really awesome work. We also wanted to share out a couple of other things, just, as you're kind of thinking about defining community, thinking about kind of the environment and what kind of environmental data exists there. So, and again, we're going to share out these slides so you'll have access to these links, but, using the FEMA flood maps, for example, I know Orleans Parish, this is a little bit different than the other 12 parishes that we're working with in the region, because you've got the HISDRS, the levee system, right? And then same with the 2023 Coastal Master Plan Data Viewer, but there's the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool that's got a lot of great information and data that's around, it could be air pollution, it could be demographics, et cetera, et cetera. There's also Deep South Center for Environmental Justice's Environmental Justice Data Action Portal, which has got some great information, and then also the tree canopy cover data set as well. So you'll have links to all of these, but just also storytelling about that community with data too, with additional data, because everything that you just mentioned is also data. So yeah. All right, so developing milestones. We're going to do a little bit of practice on this as a group, as a small group, because we've still got 2 people, which is great. So you are required to use this simple template for the purpose of your application too, but really milestones, those are points that show a lot of progress that's been made in your project. You'll have goals between those milestones, and then really however you want to think about them that's helpful to you is great. If you're a person who thinks better working from the end in mind and then coming all the way back, that's great. If you like to think all the way from step 1 to step, the last step, that's cool. There might sometimes be, I like to call them navigational beacons, but if you are leveraging other funds with this, for example, and those other funds need to be spent sooner, really kind of thinking about the pieces of this project that you're applying for that need to be done in tandem with that other funding source to make sure that that deadline is being met. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here working on milestones together. So hopefully Jackie and Dia, one or both of you, if you'd like, we can start to build out your milestone chart. So I'm going to exit out of this screen.
Advantages of the small group, huh?
Yeah, we got a small group here, so this is good stuff. This is good. All right, so I just put in the chat a link to a document that's got the milestone template on it. Let me do a quick time check here just so I can make sure I'm keeping us on track. Okay, perfect. So if we wanted to, what we could do is we could spend 10 minutes building out one of these collaboratively for Dia, and then another 10 minutes building one out collaboratively for you, Jackie. Would that feel good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so whoever feels like they're ready to go first, and I'll just put your name here.
I can try to go first.
Well, let's do it.
Oh gosh.
That's okay.
Like
We don't
I'm-
mean to be so high pressure. Just
Oh, that's okay. I'm just like trying to look back to the picture that I took of the measuring your impact screen. Okay. So, all right. Well, I
do you
would
want to start off by talking a little bit about your project idea, and then we can go from there?
sure. Actually, so okay, now I'm gonna say this stuff for the sake of the exercise, and you know, if I forget anything, please let me know. But so let's see. I would say for the project idea, I'm gonna say this assuming that we're gonna be going for the round one funding for the community planning and implementation. And so I guess what I would say is that, at this point, with us having successfully implemented the initial aspect of our community-led green infrastructure project, which started off with rain gardens, which have been extremely successful in keeping the stormwater managed and the air pollution concerns under the I-10 expressway. It's been great, but with that first round of support, we were only able to complete like 4 blocks of that work. We've got a total of 19 that we manage in partnership with the city. So I would say for the project idea this time, and given where we are as an organization and what funding opportunities are available, now is a great time to have a second round of community engagement and co-design around, what edits and amplifications we would want to do to our phase 2 implementation of the community-led green infrastructure. Because it's a super unique situation in that we're not doing the installation in like at public at personal residences. This would be like in a public thoroughfare, along the North Claiborne Street, that right under the I-10 expressway. So I would say for the first milestone would definitely be like our first successful community planning summit, where we have gathered folks together to discuss, hey, where we are, what we're proposing, do the ideation together, listening sessions and things like that. Yes. And then I guess in the time frame, and when we say time frame, are we thinking about like along the program year when we get the funding, right? Okay.
Yes.
So I would say that like we would probably suggest that if we're looking at a program year, the time frame for that first community planet summit has to be in the first quarter of it. So I'd say Q1 or within the Q1.
Funding
Another
will go out in January, if that helps.
Okay. Well, realistically speaking, then let's say after Mardi Gras and Lent are over. So that's good. Okay, great. All right. So then I guess another milestone could be when we have our first draft of the co-designed project. And that would be where we had taken, okay, I'm going to do this quickly because we're going to switch in like 7 minutes. But
Good.
the description of that would be, let's say that we had taken all of the feedback, taken all of the information and the learnings from the first milestone and have incorporated that into a solid working draft that is accessible and that has infographics and is mutually intelligible across all levels of understanding in our community group. And I'd say that the time frame for that could be that would happen. Let's say that would be sometime sometime before the end of March. Sorry, I'm not being as specific.
That's okay, Dia. We're doing this on the fly. The purpose of this
Yeah.
exercise is to give you something to be able to grow and build from.
Absolutely. Okay, and then thank you. And let me see. So another milestone would probably be that maybe we would have like a second summit. Like let's just say for the sake of building this out as milestones, we're just gonna work with the assumption that we're gonna have quarterly summits. So that we would be able to reconvene with folks along the touch points and stuff like that. And the thing is like that, at some point before the part of the phase 2 plan actually being developed, it would be that we would have have renderings made and have the nuts and bolts mapped out, like a timeline of implementation and what implementation would look like and what the community folks like what their level of involvement would be through all of that, so that they can sort of see themselves through the whole process. And also, as I don't know, I'm saying this out of order, so I like to work backwards, like to work backwards from where we're going. What we would also like to have after the benefit of this whole community-based planning process is a solid proposal for round 2 implementation funds drafted. So not just the plan is developed, but that we actually have the application drafted to apply for the second round of implementation funds, and we would have the benefit of being able to include everything that we got from the phase 1 work, so that we can show not only the continuity, but that we can demonstrate that we have the relationships, the capacity, the buy-in to actually go forward and implement this. And here are the folks that you can expect to be around and be involved in that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm adding in here, you talked about the community planning summits every quarter, so I've added those in here. And then
Right.
I'm assuming phase 2, that's the plan and proposals developed quarter 4. So
I think this is great. One thing I do want to throw out there just on timelines is that our timeline next year will be similar to this year. So the application window will be open in the fall.
Okay. That makes sense. So then how about, let's say, let's then just say, because I think the other one would be, okay, let's say that the phase 2 plan and proposal developed for round 2 of funding, let's have that completed by August of 2026. Because that would allow us to, be showing up at these type of experiences this time next year, kind of already with some working documents in place, that with the benefit of what we get from the TA and stuff like that, we would leave ourselves time for not only fine tuning and making any sort of edits that need to happen, but that we also have time to share with the folks that have been invested in this whole process and stuff. Leaving plenty of room and space for communication, because you know how that could work. And also, when I'm using the word community planning summit, I know that sounds like, you know, something that'll be at the Virgin Hotel downtown or all fancy. No, it would be like 100% in community, accessible, with all the other things that are brought up that you plan for, to make sure that everybody's available to participate, whether it's like having childcare, having you know, reimbursable public transportation, and being able to have these things in times and dates that work well for working folks and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think you've got a really good start here, Dia. We've got 1 more minute. So is there anything missing on this? There might be stuff that's missing, but like, is there anything that you want to address in a minute?
um, not not that I could think of in a minute. Of course, I would probably put in stuff like, you know, being able to, you know, get consultation and stuff from subject matter experts that can help us with, like, you know, the science behind stuff, and being able to give us those really yummy metrics around like how many, you know, gallons of stormwater are we gonna redivert and all that stuff. Like, but that would be in there somewhere too. The deadlines and milestones for like consultation, and sort of syncing up what we're hearing from community with what makes the most sense, like from a landscape engineering landscape architect standpoint, and things like that too. That's
Thanks,
it.
Dia. I think that's a great point. The other thing I'm thinking about too, and this would be for anybody, it's just kind of that startup period. Sometimes it's, you know, you got to build your materials, like your one pagers and all that stuff, to get people to the table. So there's always that startup period that's, you know, inevitably longer than you think it is. So
absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity to practice.
of course, and this is yours to take and do what you want with. So
Okay.
you know, that's the purpose. Part of these sessions is we're going to be running through exercises to get your application in tip-top state. So I know, Jackie, you said that you weren't necessarily sure if you were going to apply, but I do want to open up the door to you. Like, if you want to do this exercise, we can run through it.
Sure.
Yeah. So we can tell us a little bit more about your project idea, Jackie. I know you're doing work with Waterwise Gulf South in one of the neighborhoods. Sorry.
And so I will continue doing the work that we're doing. I would apply to get money for residential projects. So how we go about that is we first, you know, we canvass, we walk the neighborhoods, we knock on doors, we get people to register for 101 workshop. And once they attend the 101 workshop, we would also ask them to attend a tour. And we do this annually in the spring and in the fall. So once they do that, they would apply for a residential project, and we would determine the highest priority of the, say if it's 7 site visits and we award 3 or 4, we will pick the highest priority of those sites to manage the water on their property.
All right. I think I'm keeping up with Jackie. All right. I've got recruitment is the first milestone. So that's canvas, walking neighborhood to get people to attend the 101 workshop. Then you have the workshop. Is the workshop separate from the tour?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So after the 101 workshop, they got the tour. There's an application period, and then y'all award those applications. Is that right?
Based on funding.
All right. Cool. And then after y'all award the applications, what does it look like after that?
after we award the applications, then at that point we we seek bids from contractors based on the notes from our assessment. Then we return to the resident's home with the contractor and have a more formal assessment and come up with a solution because, of course, residents have thousands of issues, but we decide what is the highest priority for the resident based on the budget. And then once that's done, we coordinate between the contractor and the homeowner on starting the implementation. And once they apply, we have the residents sign an MOU saying that they will give us access to those projects for the next 2 years. So when we have these tours annually in the spring and the fall, we have multiple choices on, options to have in the tour.
Typing all this down for you, Jackie. You said it's for up to 2 years after installation?
Yeah.
All right.
Jackie, I want to jump in there and encourage you in your application to us to make sure to include that note about the MOU and being able to use the site as access for community education. Because one thing that we are definitely looking for is both community impact and community access to improve community understanding of green infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
I'm adding that as a note in here too for you, Jackie, so that you've got that.
Thank you.
Of course. Is there anything that happens after that implementation? I think we started to unpack a little bit of it there, but
Yeah, so after implementation, we have a satisfied resident who is now managing, depending on the project, however many gallons of water, reducing stress from the pipes and the pumps of our municipal system.
it might not be the right categorization. I'm just trying to think about the application. So I'm calling this measurement and evaluation. So it's resident satisfaction and impact metrics are being collected and understood. Anything else that should be included?
And they learn about green infrastructure at the workshop. It's a green infrastructure one-on-one workshop.
Perfect. I'm gonna put that in here specifically. I think I'm familiar with these, but I don't want to make assumptions. And when people are going on this tour, are they touring other residents' projects?
Yes, it's a combination of residential projects and projects done on private and public property. For instance, we may visit a site that's on DOTD land, or we may visit a stormwater lot in the ninth ward that's I would say that's on private property because it's owned by the Fredericksburg Neighborhood Association. Or we may go to see the St. Rock project. and then a combination of residential. So we try to include them all, and we may even stop by the sewage and water board pumping station.
Okay. Cool. And then one question I had is you said that you do the green infrastructure workshops in the spring and the fall. Do you also want to have this green infrastructure workshop reflected later in the milestone chart as well?
I didn't catch the beginning. Could you say that again?
You mentioned earlier that the Green Infrastructure 101 workshops, y'all do them in the spring and the fall. Do you want to have, I just have one in here for the spring. Do you want me to also make one for the fall too?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to put that in here around the time for the assessment implementation contractor period. And then this is all yours to make edits, adjustments, anything that you need on it. And that was like perfect timing. We're at the top of the hour, so we can go to the next. I hope that this was supportive in getting, at least one part of your application put together. And if you want to run through any of these things with us, feel free to, again, set up a technical assistance session, office hour with us. You can attend the office hours that we have every Monday from 10:30 to 11:30 every single week until the application's due in about 6 weeks now, October 24th, if I can do the math correctly. All right. So we're going to jump back in. Let me see if I can get this to be a little less slow. All right. Sorry, I've got to click all the way back through this. It did not give me the option to present from where I was at. That's good. It was just kind of soak in a little bit more as I go through. All right. The next part, and again, this is a place where you need technical assistance. This is what we're here for. So developing your budget. It sounds like both of y'all have done this before, so you've got maybe a sense about how much things cost, which is awesome. For this, there are some specific budget categories. So as Alyssa and I have mentioned, this is a federal grant. So there are certain things that you've got to report out, and it's got to be done in certain categories and things, but that's exactly what we're here for. So you'll have what we call direct costs and indirect costs in your line item budget. And those direct costs are going to be personnel. So what kind of time is being spent on this? Your fringe. So if you have employees that have benefits, that would be a part of your fringe. Travel. And you do need to use the U.S. General Services Administration rate for per diems for that. So every city, if you've got to travel somewhere to a conference to show your work, for example, you've got to book with the per diem rate that is specific to that city for your hotel, for example. There's equipment and supplies. We can, in a one-to-one session, if you need to, we can get into the specific details about the definitions between those. There's a dollar cap amount. I think it's $5,000 if I'm remembering correctly. If it's more than $5,000 for that particular item that you're purchasing, it's considered equipment. Contractual, construction funds, and other. So if you have participant support stipends, for example, they fall in that other category. Yeah, and that'll complete your total direct. And then for your indirect as well, something to note is that your, how do I want to say, if you do not have a, oh, got somebody else coming in. Hey, Raymond, thanks for joining. So if you've got a federally negotiated indirect cost rate, then you can use that. But if not, then the maximum indirect that you can ask for is 15% of your budget. That has increased from last year, which is nice in a lot of ways. And you also need to use the IRS federal mileage rate as well, which I think It's 75 cents a mile, but we've got the link here. So it's always just check and confirm that. The other part of this that you're gonna have to submit is your budget narrative. And that budget narrative does need to be pretty detailed. So if we're gonna think about how detailed that's gonna be, we'll use an example. So if we're thinking about salaries and fringe as a category, if you have an engagement coordinator, this could be somebody that's already on staff. So you have $45,000 a year for that engagement coordinator allocated from this project. They're going to dedicate 25 hours a week in that role. The salary for that person is $31,500 annually, and that is specific to their 25 hours a week, right? They have a fringe rate of 30%, which is dictated by your organization's policy, and you say that that's included. You say how often that person is paid. So they're paid every other week in this case. And you say, this is how much we anticipate spending per month through the duration of the 12-month grant. So it's pretty specific and detailed, but again, we can walk through each one of these things with you.
And similar to the logic model, our intention on including this in here is that this mimics what it will look like on a federal application. So we really want to give our applicants that practice at doing applications that look like that level of grant application, so that you can do it with us, working alongside you, supporting you, and really giving you the capacity building opportunity, so that in the future, you know, when you are applying for those multi-million-dollar grants and those big funding opportunities, you'll have done this before and it won't feel like this new strange thing to do.
Yeah, thanks, Alyssa. Are there any questions on budget? The good news is that once you write one of these things, it's just going to feel like a copy and paste. It's the same format over and over and over again. Okay, we'll go to the next slice then. All right, gathering your documents. Again, since this is a federal grant, you've got a few things you've got to submit. We've got a little checklist here. So we'll be sending the slides. They're going to be posted online. And the things that you need to have are the logic model and the milestones. We've went through both of those. We've already started on the milestones for a couple of folks that are here. You're going to need your detailed line item budget. If you want to, you can take that template that we just shared and you can put it in a Google sheet or an Excel file so that you can then create your own kind of Excel workbook around it as well, since it has all the budget categories. You're going to need resumes or short bios of key staff that are involved in the project. You'll need your current year operating budget, current financial statements through July of 2025, your board of directors list, your Form 990. And then there are a couple of things that are optional. So, you know, such things are documentation is supporting the feasibility of the project. So if you have building plans, studies, I know that's kind of been mentioned a little bit here. So if you've got those things, it's a great opportunity to build out your application. Engagement documentation. So if you are working with partners and you've signed agreements with them, or if they have letters of support, it's a great opportunity to be able to include those here. If it's a project that you've done in the past, you know, you've already done stage one, so that planning, for example, and you're applying for the implementation portion of funding and you've got that plan with the engagement documentation in it, go ahead and attach that here. And then something else that's optional, but it will be required later on if you're awarded, is your copy of the liability insurance. Are there any questions about the required documents or optional?
Let's go.
Okay, we'll go to the next. All right, so before you submit, there are some things to kind of think about for your final review. Think about your checklist. So we've got a checklist here for those required documents. Run through that, make sure you've got everything. Whenever you ran through the request for application as well, you know, make sure that you've filled out every single section to the best of your ability. if you can have somebody that's not the primary grant writer review your application from the funder's perspective and identify areas to strengthen your application, that would be great. One of the roles for technical assistance that we can provide, we being specifically ISC, because GNOF will not be reviewing your applications, that would create a conflict of interest. But yeah, we would be happy to look at your application from that perspective as well. Have somebody that's not your primary grant writer review your budget, because sometimes whenever you get really deep in the numbers, there can be little tiny errors and it can throw off your whole budget, right? So just make sure that they're reviewing it for those little errors and making sure that it's in alignment with RFA as well as federal spending guidelines, which will, the remaining 2 trainings that we have will really focus on financial reporting and grant management. So if you can attend those, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty details on that. And also have a subject matter expert review your application if possible. So some of these applications are going to be more technical, so we are going to really be thinking about, you know, inches of rain that have fallen and where that water is going, how quickly it's infiltrating, over how long, et cetera, et cetera. So if you need somebody that has that type of expertise to review your application, this would be a really great opportunity to just make sure that you've got a really sound application and that everything's put together. And we've got a couple of extra resources, and again, you'll have this deck. You know, grant writing is evolving. It's something people spend their entire careers doing. So, you know, I really encourage folks to just continue to learn and develop. This has been fun for me because this has been another way to develop my own grant writing skill set. There's a lot of free trainings that are out there. There's a couple that are listed here. Whenever the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers were still stood up, they did a lot of great free grant writing training workshops. There are a couple of those that are still online, which is great, and we have them linked here. There are some paid opportunities too. So Writing for Green, I think, Dia, maybe you said that you went through a grant writing training that was with Deep South, or was it Jackie?
That was Jackie that mentioned that in her
Okay.
introduction, but I did participate in getting the technical assistance from them on a grant that we submitted back in February. But that was one of the EPA grants that got taken away with the executive orders. But yeah,
I'm sorry.
So far, the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice has been my go-to resource for support with learning about federal grants and things. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, they were one of the Tic Tacs, so we got to work with them at ISC, and Writing for Greens did a lot of the grant writing training for them. So they're solid resource.
Yeah, we were able to create an account with Writing for Green and get a bunch of technical assistance and webinars with them throughout the process.
Awesome. So y'all can for others vouch for that process. Yeah, it's a lot of good